See to
not be abolished. We have to be honest with people. All of the time there are increasing demands on public expenditure. The last 2 years have seen an unprecedented intervention by government, by the state in the economy.
And GPs deliver a more complex service than before, resulting in some doctors looking to work abroad or in other non-GP areas of medicine. That's the view of one doctor who is responding to an Irish College of General Practitioners warning that 2,000 doctors need to be recruited over the next decade to cover retirements. Galway-based GP Dr Brian Higgins says a lot of change has taken place over the last 20 years.
There's been a lot of changes in medicine for the better, and that has looked at making things safer and better for patients. But that does mean that the service delivered by GPs has been more complex.
That's it for now. More in an hour.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Watch Ireland bash Boris's boys in Twickenham with a Ryanair flight to London.
Cold and windy tonight, with heavy rain extending eastwards across the country, bringing a risk of localised flooding. Lowest temperatures of 0 to 3 degrees, coldest in the east. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
This is News Talk.
Hey, how you doing? Joe Molloy with you this evening. Great show on the way. Tara Sullivan with us this hour to chat all things Super Bowl. We have Keith Wood and Liam Toland on Monday Night Rugby. Eddie Brennan will be along talking hurling. And then after 9 o'clock, football show as usual. Pat Nevin will be along. Themes from last week which continue. Kurt Zouma facing much scrutiny. Manchester United in all sorts of trouble. 53106, the text number. We're at Off the Ball on Twitter. We have Eoin Sheahan along. Hello.
Hey Joe, how's it going?
When do you sleep? I mean, what's going on here? Super Bowl, OTB AM, you're on OTB PM, Off the Ball, whatever you want to call it. And I mean, you got to be out there living life as well, on surely, no?
I mean, Monday night. What else is there to be at? Where is Monday Night Football? Where give us something to give me something to do with my life other than coming out to talk to you, Joe. Is what I'm asking the sporting gods this week.
I've got nothing to offer you. Richie McCormack, hello.
Howdy, Joe.
So, Super Bowl win. We're talking about that with Tara Sullivan. I suspect you've watched the game back at this stage, Eoin. I know you hadn't stayed up. I was listening to you this morning to watch all of it. So we have a win for LA Rams. Was this a classic Super Bowl? Middling?
I would say middling. I would say, especially in the context of some of the drama that we've had over the last few weeks in the NFL, it probably dipped a little bit below that level as we had that Tom Brady comeback that almost was, 3-4 weeks ago at this point. Patrick Mahomes getting dumped out. Come back and actually won it and play at the end with 40 seconds left on the clock last night. We could have had an incredible conclusion to this game. But I did see a statistic that, was it all the postseason games of the NFL this season were decided by 6 points or fewer? That it just summed up an NFL playoffs and I guess a Super Bowl included as well, that was extremely tight. And that's all you can really ask for. So I think maybe American football fans were spoiled for choice over the last little while. So it dipped below that stratospheric level that had been set in January.
Yeah. The more I go through life, the more I realise our perceptions of time become very interesting as we get older. So, I mean, the talk here is this is a second franchise win, a first since the year 2000, which for me just feels within, a very reachable distance, and it references left, right and centre of that. And then I was thinking, well, actually, if you'd said to me in the year 2000, the last time the Rams won was in 1978, that would genuinely feel like, my God, this famine has to end. And I think that applied to a generation with the halftime show as well. Lots of tweets of people in their late 30s, early 40s who were reflecting on the fact that their young children sat open-mouthed as their parents, who are otherwise incredibly boring and don't have much to offer, burst into word-perfect hip-hop and lost their minds for 15 minutes and suddenly realised, oh my God, this is like my parents when, the Stones did the halftime show, and I thought, well, why are the old guys doing the halftime show? So these are interesting things to reflect on, Eoin. You're still young, thankfully.
Yeah, I'm still young. I don't want to say anything about, relatively speaking, I think, I don't want to say anything about the halftime show with Richie McCormack listening in, because I've been getting a bit of heat today for saying this morning that Kendrick Lamar and Eminem are in a different stratosphere to one another. So I'm not sure whether or not that was a hot take, a good take, or just a plain wrong take, Richie.
I've got company.
Oh, Richie McCormack ambushed by one of the little people that we were just speaking of.
He's telling me he was having his first time at karate, so it kind of plays into sports tonight. But yeah, well done. But yeah, no, the halftime show, like as you mentioned, the skewing of time, and you're talking about the gaps of 22, because obviously 2000 is now 22 years ago, and the midpoint between 1978 and now is the year 2000. But also, like, that halftime show was based off an album that was released now 23 years ago. So the equivalent for that in the year 99 would have been something released in 76. So yeah, we're scarily getting old.
Yeah, it is. I was talking to someone recently whose children were learning Oasis songs, and he was making the point, well, this is akin to like our parents listening to ABBA. You know, and all these moments can hit you quite crushingly, I think, and quite suddenly. What did you think of the halftime show, Rich?
Yeah, it was fine. Yeah, like I absolutely thought it was grand. It's just like I'm always
people are saying it's iconic. Come on.
No, I'm always enthused. Like I'm always enthused by the staging of it, and I love those time lapse shots of when they're showing the field being cleared at halftime, and then they're bringing on the staging. And then, because I saw that first this morning, and then I saw the actual thing later on when the NFL uploaded it to their YouTube channel, and I was like, Jesus, like I wouldn't be walking around on the top of that thing seeing as it looks like it's just styrofoam and they just put it out there temporarily. But yeah, like it was grand, you know. As halftime shows go, no real issue with it. Thought it was fine. Thought it was fun. Enjoyed Kendrick Lamar's interjection, and yeah, all good.
Yeah. You see, Eoin, you, because this, I wouldn't have a feel for this at all, Kendrick Lamar. I'm just sorry, but you were arguing this morning he is of a different stratosphere to Eminem. Would that be a widely held view? No.
I think maybe in recent times, and that was my whole point. It was like, give me the last 10, 12 years of Kendrick rather than the last 10, 12 years of Eminem, and it's not even a question. It's not like, I mean, it would be ridiculous to suggest otherwise. And that was all I was saying earlier on.
Oh, well, that's Eminem has effectively retired the last 12 years. I mean, at his peak, like it was fairly incredible.
That's the problem. He still kept going, and fewer people have actually cared.
Oh,
and that's true of any artist. You get to a point, like your first 4 or 5 years are always going to be your absolute zenith, and then from that point on, it's all about maintaining the fans that you've already created, because you're not going to get any new ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, like he's kept going, and fair play to him. But Kendrick's work over the last decade has been just immense.
Okay, I need to actually check that out. I'm less aware of that than I think I should be.
I want to sit there in a room. I just want to have a live stream of you, and we can't do this because of copyright reasons, but we can get around the copyright reasons by just putting headphones on you, listening to like 2-3 Kendrick Lamar albums back to back.
Yes, okay.
And just your reactions to it as it goes out live.
And the only rule is I have to dance. I have to interpret it with my body in some way.
No. I want a close up on your face just to see the reactions to some of the lyrics and stuff like that, just to hear you go, oh, okay,
interesting.
All right. Well, all right.
Okay. I will think about doing that. The other story from the weekend, which I think is very compelling television, was Graham Souness talking about the Kurt Zouma controversy, and Jamie Carragher there as well. So I'm sure people have seen Souness is livid about the whole situation, was saying that he wouldn't like to share a dressing room with Zouma, was saying Zouma should not play again for the rest of the season, all words to that effect. And the general reaction, I would have said, on Twitter, was Graham Souness, nail on the head. And it was very interesting to watch Jamie Carragher trying to just acknowledge what Zouma might be going through. And, Carragher brings a unique baggage to this as the man who was public enemy number one for a time when he spat at the 12-year-old girl. And you forget he was on Sky News the next day and made watch several replays on a massive screen and was made cry on Sky News. I mean, he was asked, how do your children feel about this? Which is always like the game over shot. I mean, and he was suspended from Sky for the rest of the season, and talked to Gary Neville recently about going to Steve Peters about that, and finding that I'd say a period of torment, genuinely. And so he was just trying to at least posit the notion that Kurt Zouma might be going through a very difficult time, and that was generally shot down. He never mentioned his own experience, but it was obvious this is the empathy with which he was speaking. And I don't know where this story is really, but certainly I think Souness has reinvigorated it.
Definitely. I think that possibly Souness's angle was probably hardened by the fact that Zouma was named to play when they were having that conversation, and he had played midweek. He would have been fair enough to think that there hadn't been any real punishment meted out to Kurt Zouma. Like, it's been interesting, the reaction to that reaction, the line that he had, the cat hadn't done anything wrong, got clipped up, and that is the bit that went viral on social media, or people just saying that exact bit. When in actual fact, what Kurt Zouma was saying was about so much more than that. It was actually a really eloquent way of talking about the whole situation, and something that maybe has been sidestepped a little bit. Like, I take your point on Carragher, and he does have a very interesting angle on it and a very unique. But in yesterday's Mail on Sunday, that actually what you had was a situation on Sky Sports News a few months ago where you had a Sky Sports News presenter, celebrating the arrival of the new ownership at Newcastle United, and then a few months later would condemn the lack of any sort of punishment being meted out to Kurt Zouma. And he was making the valid point that both of these things are very, very wrong. The Saudi Arabian regime and the atrocities there, and kicking a cat. But there are levels to this sort of thing. So he was making the point that maybe people on Sky Sports need to check exactly what they are critical of. But in isolation, I mean, I think Graham Souness was absolutely hitting the nail on the head there yesterday. And I was surprised, actually. I don't know why, but I was surprised with how strong he was on it.
I think West Ham have made such a mess of this. They've hung David Moyes out to dry, and he was making bad decisions on this. They should have stepped in and said, 4-game ban, I would say go beyond the 2 weeks' wages and 100 hours at the local animal shelter, and he's going to become an ambassador for that shelter as well, and he's going to raise money for them for the rest of his time at West Ham, just to get ahead of it. So as in this immediate period of anger, well, at least a debate wouldn't be created about whether or not Zouma was being punished properly. And the point Souness made as well is, if Zouma's to be forgiven, he has to show genuine contrition. So none of us really know what kind of person Kurt Zouma is. Is the kind of tricky thing from the outside. None of us know if he's mortified and desperately wants to go on television and has the capability to express the required remorse that would maybe calm the situation, or if that's not something that would be a good idea. We don't know how he's feeling about the whole thing. But I think if Rich, there's any possibility that he could handle being cross-examined, say a la Carragher on Sky News, and could go on and take the hits and express genuine remorse, then that would not be a bad idea either, because at the moment it feels like we're going to just stumble into the next West Ham game, and is he going to play?
Yeah, as you mentioned, like the from a PR perspective, West Ham handled this terribly, and what they should have done, like you say, is to have him outside an animal shelter within 36 hours of this happening and go in public. A sit-down interview, and one where he shows genuine contrition, would be probably within their rights. But it's I'm almost at the point, I don't think we can kick him anymore for what he's done. I mean, the actual incident is horrific. He issued an apology, a written one. I'm not sure how up he will be to speaking, etc. That's up to him. That's up to the club. But again, the club really needed to show leadership here, and they didn't. The club needed to be the ones to set him aside for a couple of games, and they didn't. And you had the weird position yesterday whereby he's going off, he's complaining of feeling unwell, and he was complaining of blurred vision, and I don't know what was behind that, etc. We clearly can't, but you wouldn't be shocked if there was the stress of the last week or so playing some part there in it, because it was his first away game, obviously. At least when he was picked at Watford, he had kind of thought in the back of his head, maybe that I'm in front of my home fans, I'll get an easier ride at least here than I would do away. But he shouldn't be in the position whereby stress and all that kind of thing is something that he has to consider. Yeah. It's in everybody's interest. It's in the club's interest from a PR perspective. It's in his interest from a player welfare perspective. And just in terms of looking like you're taking care of this issue, to withdraw him for at least a couple of games and keep him out of eyesight, have him do the sit-down interview, show contrition, move on, pay the fine, do the animal shelter stuff and all that, but have it be genuine. Continuing to blunder on while also playing the act of punishment has made this look like an absolute farce.
Yeah, and I think you're right in terms of how much can you kick him. again, it's the wrong phrase to use in this circumstance, but that's what Carragher's getting at. Like, how much do we want to push this person? None of us know what he's going through at the moment, and the fact that he pulled out of the game suggests he's going through quite something. It may have been a moment where he was sampling the reaction of the away stadium, and he thought, oh my God, is this my life now? Am I ever going to escape this? And to some degree he never will, which is probably a terrifying thing to realise. On Souness, by the way, I hadn't realised. So last September, when there was that carbon neutral game on Sky, I think it was a Spurs game, wasn't it? It was carbon neutral, and Sky Sports were talking to their pundits in advance and trying to talk climate change for a couple of minutes. And so Roy Keane, Micah Richards, Graham Souness were on, and what do you do about climate change? And I think the boys said stuff about, well, I drive an electric car and I try and walk more. And Souness, interestingly, and he did say that climate change wasn't his primary motivation, but he revealed he'd been vegan for the previous 3 years. And so what he said on the programme at the time was, the reason I did it, my concern was animal welfare. That was my biggest single reason. I think the way we treat animals is despicable, but that's for another day. So, Graham Souness is a very interesting character, Eoin, and on a front like that, he's been very vocal in the last couple of years about learning more about LGBTQ rights and going to March in Brighton and reflecting on attitudes in dressing rooms of old. This character of depth, an interesting one.
There's a real reason why he's been kept in his role at Sky Sports for as long as he has, isn't there? It's almost as if that there's been a constant flushing of new talent through that studio over the last little while. Even people of an older vintage who just hadn't really done much punditry before are kind of like brought through, I guess, and pushed out, and there's a constant revolving door there. But Souness has been an ever-present, and A, it's because of his great analysis, but B, he is so versatile when it comes to all these sorts of subjects, and clearly is a very curious mind, constantly moulding himself. And if nothing else, in the aftermath of this Kurt Zouma conversation, he is one of the people who could stand up to those Twitter trolls who are like, don't give out to Kurt Zouma if you eat meat yourself. At least Kurt Zouma can turn around and say, well, actually, I've been vegan for the last little while, so I am not even close to being a hypocrite at this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if Souness is saying our treatment of animals is a whole other show, I mean, certainly the mental gymnastics amongst the general populace of meat eaters and the things we do to animals at large, and yet the love for cats and dogs is incredibly strange, isn't it? You stop and think about it. We're just the most bizarre animal of all in so many respects. We should get on with the news round before this. We've kind of gone off on a few tangents there. The news round is brought to you by Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors. So Richie, blitz us with a few there.
Yeah, James Lowe could be back in contention for the remainder of Ireland's Six Nations campaign. The winger wasn't included in the squad for those games with Wales and France due to a hamstring injury, but Leinster say Lowe has returned to training this week ahead of the visit of the Ospreys to the RDS this weekend. Renan Kelleher will have a shoulder injury assessed by the Irish medical staff this week, and Jonathan Sexton is continuing to rehab the hamstring issue that forced him to miss the game in Paris. There is bad news for Leinster as well today. Kieran Frawley's been ruled out for up to 6 weeks, having suffered a facial injury in Friday's win over Edinburgh. Northern Ireland's Communities Minister has given assurances that public money for Casement Park has been ring-fenced. Sinn Féin MLA Deirdre Hargey confirmed today that a €43 million programme to improve soccer stadia in the 6 counties has been shelved. However, Casement is viewed as an executive flagship project and will have its funding protected. The Assembly originally pledged €74 million when the Casement estimate stood at €92 million, but it's feared that cost has now spiralled to beyond 160 million. The plans are also subject to a judicial review next month, following complaints even from local residents.
And then Winter Olympics continuing?
Yeah, Kamila Valieva will take part in the individual figure skating final in Beijing, but there won't be a medal ceremony if she finishes in the top 3. The Court of Arbitration for Sport ruled that no suspension should be imposed on the 15-year-old Russian after she failed a drugs test, saying it would cause her irreparable harm. The IOC won't award the medals until an investigation into whether she violated anti-doping rules is concluded.
Okay. Richie mentioned rugby there at the top. Eoin, what's your takeaway from Stade de France Saturday night?
Well, I think that there's a couple of different things here. First of all, we seem to have isolated down already the nobody issue with Saturday night, which is this power game, which feels very similar to the conversation we've had after Leinster's defeats in Europe over the last little while. And to be honest with you, even quite similar to Ireland at the start of 2019, they're playing a totally different style of rugby now, but it does come back to this age-old issue of not being powerful enough to beat a team like France. You'd hope that the Irish game plan will develop and continue to develop more over the next 18 months, that the impact of that power, not that it'll ever be close to meaningless in rugby, but that Ireland will find other ways of getting around it, and they might be able to survive maybe in next year's Six Nations against such a powerful unit. But that is the big takeaway, isn't it? It is the single biggest reason why Ireland struggled for periods of the game. But on the flip side, then you have Ireland coming back in after half time and racing back into the game. And the performance of Joey Carbery, especially in that second half, is one that's been getting glowing reviews, while also people are holding their horses on Carbery, because he is always, for now anyway, going to be open to that reasonable criticism and the reasonable comparison between himself and Johnny Sexton. It may seem harsh, and some of the analysis may seem, but fortunately, the guy who was playing 10 the week before him happens to be one of the best 10s this country has ever produced, so that is naturally going to be the comparison that people are going to race towards.
Yeah. We keep being promised that eventually we'll get the right tactics to beat these bigger teams. I hope that's true, and we're not still here in 15 years being told we just need to get the right tactics and then we'll be able to beat the bigger teams.
I would have put it down more to decision making, and I'm not even just talking about that decision to kick for goal rather than the corner in the 71st minute. There were decisions like the line out call that was thrown to deep when we were 5 metres out, and there was every chance of a try that would have put us in front at that stage. The kick through by Hugo Keenan that was up into the air in the final minute or so, that just seemed really misjudged, that again gave away possession. I think that the game was there for Ireland. I think tactically, like there were mistakes and there were flaws, but it was fine. I think it's heartening to hear Andy Farrell say, he didn't necessarily say he supported the decisions that they made, but I think he supports the agency that he's given them to make those decisions on the field. And there is a degree of honing that and refining that and getting that right. And unfortunately, that means making mistakes in the field of battle. They will come right. And I don't think there's a cause for panic there whatsoever from Saturday. I think by and large, everything's fine. I think tactically, save for a couple of poor decisions, we're okay against what is an exceptionally good French side.
It was an absolute epic.
Yeah.
I mean, they were pummeled. The first 40 minutes, they must have been in absolute shock. The French start, where you think, oh my God, the running rugby. And of course, Dupont scored after 2 minutes. We spent the week talking about Dupont, and now he scored, and then just being crushed at the breakdown and crushed in so many collisions. The Mac Hansen try was such a freak, like a genius freak, but like such a freak thing that it almost gave them a defibrillator, a pump of life just to kind of stay in this a little bit. But the way they rallied in the second half was genuinely impressive, and then almost began gradually to win the arm wrestle a touch and looked on top for maybe 15, 20 minutes. And then there's the decision, and 4 minutes earlier they've lost a line out in that exact corner, and then you've got your second row deciding, what do I do here? And Joey's kicking everything, and still would be 8 minutes left, and at worst then we could be in here for a draw. I mean, people have said, what's a draw? Draws would be, I think, phenomenal if they had gone and drawn in France.
They needed 2 scores in that last 10 minutes to actually put the game to bed. If they had taken a try from either that line out or from what ended up being that kick at goal, I think France would have come back and there would have been every chance that they would have edged back in front again in the time that they had. So they did need 2 scores, and to take the handiest one of those being a penalty, come back and then try and get the try would have been just fine. It's weird because we've got a mad big rugby section with 2 former internationals on the way, but I don't think there's a massive need for a dissection of the game or a look into it in huge depth as regards a crisis, because there is none, and Ireland are in a pretty good place, I think, regardless.
I think Keith Wood and Liam Tone are very positive about the general state of play, but all told, then you have the decision and then it doesn't happen, and a weird last 5-6 minutes. Bad kicks from both teams, France nudge ahead, game over. But it was just such an epic, it was amazing. Watching Italy-England the next day felt like a different sport. Oh my God. The Italian thing's a big problem. Like every week there's 2 matches. That's where we are. There's not even the hint of we just need to get back on to where you could say in previewing the game, there could be an upset here. We're a million miles from that now. There's not even a hint of jeopardy off these games.
No, and it's because the Six Nations matters. People don't want to make wholesale changes against Italy. These teams that they're coming up against are always relatively strong because of scoring difference. They need to make sure to get the bonus point, whereas in November and in the summer tours they tend to have more of a chance. So they're in a competition that's brutal and they're just not up to the standard. Like, I mean, there's constant talk now of potential promotion relegation. Get Georgia in there. I'm not sure that necessarily fix anything. Maybe the sort of slight heart attack they gave Ireland at the end of 2020 was again a November test, and I think it'll be interesting to see what would happen in the middle of the Six Nations.
No, I don't think Georgia's the answer. South Africa lurking might be the threat to Italy.
Yeah.
So, Rich, do you want to bring us a final couple of stories then?
Yeah, Cooper Kupp was named MVP after his late touchdown secured a second ever Super Bowl for the LA Rams last night. They came from 2016 down midway through the final quarter to beat the Cincinnati Bengals 23-20 at SoFi Stadium. The Rams, the second team to win a Super Bowl at their home venue, and Sean McVay is the youngest ever coach at 36 to lead a team to the Vince Lombardi Trophy. Ethan McElroy, meanwhile, has joined Ulster's lengthy injury list. The winger suffered an ankle injury in their recent win over Connacht, but Matty Ray, Geordie Murphy, Tom Stewart, Stuart Moore and Cormac Izuchukwu have all returned to full training ahead of their trip to the Dragons. More injury news this time in the northeast of England, and Newcastle dealt a huge blow in their battle against the drop. Kieran Trippier has suffered a fractured bone in his foot. That was during yesterday's win over Aston Villa. He scored the winner there and also a goal in the previous game during midweek. And Maggie Farrelly is going to make a piece of history on Sunday. The Cavan official will become the first woman to referee an Allianz Football League game. Farrelly will be on the whistle for the Division 4 meeting of Leitrim and London in Carrick-on-Shannon. She previously made history in November by taking charge of the Cavan Football Decider, the men's one, that is.
Very good. Richie McCormack, thank you.
Nice one.
Eoin Sheahan, pleasure. Thanks, Mill.
Cheers, guys.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's cash machine.
Okay, so where we are here, no winner again today. We are rolling over, and now you could be the winner of €17,389.22 up for grabs. So to be in with a chance of winning, all you have to do is text the word play to 57599. And remember, if you already entered on Friday, then your entry carries over into tomorrow's draw. So get your entry in by 3 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, and then across the Go Loud network of stations, Barry Dunn will make the call. If your phone rings, answer within 5 rings, tell him the exact amount in euro and cents, and we'll pay the cash into your account. So tomorrow's amount, €17,389.22. Text play to 57599. Over 18s only. Text costs €2.50, and you are playing across the Go Loud network of stations. Terms and conditions